The FNRad Snowboard Podcast is presented by Vans.
Oh yeah, I wanted to be absolutely not attractive to snowboarders.
Maybe we need an injection of that, because it'd be interesting.
And I didn't sign the contract, probably just had it in my bag for a couple of months.
And we're all like, oh, let's just bang and let her run.
We pushed each other to become better.
Front three-tailed it.
Season 5 of the FNRad Snowboard Podcast is sponsored by Wired Snowboards, the Boardroom Snowboard Shop, Anon Optics, Crow's Nest Barbershops, and Tribute Board Shop in Nelson, BC. Support for the show also comes from Cypress, Grouse, and Mount Seymour, Vancouver's 3 local mountains. Crow's Nest Barbershops have locations around the globe and specialize in high-quality haircuts and hair care products. When you step foot into a Crow's Nest Barbershop as a snowboarder, you'll recognize the familiar presence of people who get it. If you live near or are visiting a city with a Crow's Nest Barbershop, get your hair cut and tell them you heard about them on FNRad. Jussi Oksanen is a Finnish professional freestyle snowboarder who competed in the Olympics, the US Open, the X Games, and had Transworld's coveted Video Part of the Year. He started the Mizu Container Company, all while raising 2 kids with his wife in sunny California. He couldn't be a nicer guy, and I'm hyped to bring you this interview from his home overlooking the Pacific Ocean.
So I started snowboarding 89.
Holy jeez.
Yeah, so that was...
You would have been a kid.
That was early days. And yeah, so just going back, I got my first skateboard when I was 5 years old. And I don't know how, but we were on a trip in Denmark with the family, and I saw a skateboard in the shop.
Rad. And
I don't think I ever seen skateboarding or skateboard, but I saw this thing and I was like, I had to have it. Right. And I was driving my parents crazy, and 2 days later they bought this thing. It was just like one of those piece of shit boards, but
like a penny board kind of thing.
Yeah, super bad, old school, skinny. But it was like instantly the thing. So I spent hours on this terrible wooden deck that had huge holes, just trying to do TikTok and
amazing.
And so that was, I don't know, it was just the natural gravity towards that somehow. And so I started dabbling with that, and then got, I started paying attention. There was a few friends got into skateboarding, and I was skiing at the time. We had a little hill nearby, like 3 miles away.
Yeah. And
so we were skiing, but then skiing got really kind of boring because it's only like 150 vertical feet. So you do 2 or 3 turns.
Yeah.
It's kind of
Were
boring.
you into ski racing? Were you learning like that kind of stuff?
No, we're just
skiing around.
Just skiing, kind of. I guess more or less just keeping busy in the winter.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't skate in the winter. And then 89, my friend, he won like this snowboard on the grocery store, like a lottery thing.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
And so we're all like, oh my gosh, what is this thing?
Yeah.
And then from there, it was just game on.
What kind of board was it? Do you remember? Like a funky or something?
So it was like one of the, it was called, I think it's Dumle, like a chocolate brand. So it's all like a big, like a Mars bar, I don't know what the board was, but it was terrible. But
that's amazing.
But so that was sort of like where it all started, and then like a handful of us got a board. I think I got my own board at 90, and that's when I've started.
What kind of board would you have gotten?
It was, so my first board was like this, it was called the Dominator, I think. I don't know if it was the brand, but it was like yeah. I mean, it was super ghetto. I think I got it like super cheap somewhere, and it actually got stolen after like a month.
Oh man. And
it was the worst board out of all these boards, and somebody stole that. And so then I got Sims, like 145, and
like the pocket knife.
Yeah, exactly.
That's sick. Yeah, because at that time there weren't many boards for kids. Like
no,
there was like 2.
Yeah. So
that Sims pocket knife is sick though. Like that's a good board.
Yeah, it was awesome, and it was just like we didn't really know even what we're doing. We're just trying to figure out this thing, what to do with it.
Right. But is that like the kind of blast ramp times in skateboarding? So it's like you just go and build a snow jump essentially.
Totally, and there was, I mean, the conditions were just pretty brutal. You know, there was no. It was like sheer ice, and you know, sometimes it rains, and you know, you wouldn't have everything you had to build, you know, but like man-made snow, like it's not very easy to build anything, but like you
it's solid.
Tried to shovel together this little foot-high jump and just, you know, try different grabs, and it was really fun. And then a few years later, we started getting the cat driver to start piling little piles of snow. He would not build anything, but he would be like, okay, I can make you a pile. And then we'd shape and start building a little bit bigger jumps and just exploring with it all. But yeah, we weren't really filming or anything, so to speak. It was just our little gang. Just
That's super fun.
Yeah.
And were you fairly isolated in Finland, or were you getting like the magazines from the US and videos and stuff like that? You were like influenced by, you know, I mean, that's early days. That's like New Kids on the Twalk and like.
Yeah, no, it was at the early days. It was more. There was a couple older guys that were like really good snowboarders.
Yeah.
And so those were the guys like we were watching. Like, holy crap, what are they doing? And so we're just trying to keep up with those guys.
Right.
For a couple years, and then I was probably like 92 and 3. That's where like we started watching more the, you know, whatever you could get your hands on.
Yeah.
Like the, you know,
the TV
Burton
series
movie and the Roadkill.
Roadkill, right? Yeah, that was such a sick movie.
Yeah.
I watched it back in Ontario and then moved out, and just even just driving up the Baker Road, because they'd done that in the Cadillac, and all the little side hits they were hitting. I'm like, oh man, we're riding like where those guys rode.
Yeah.
So sick. That was a very fun time in snowboarding. Like waiting for those videos to come out, and then getting them, and then trying the tricks that people were doing.
Yeah, there was so much energy back then. Like you said, it's like you wait for these videos to come out and you watch them. You know, you can only get maybe, you know, 2 or 3 videos, and we'll copy VHS tapes. You make copies of them, and you watch them until the tape's worn out.
What's the proximity to other countries? Like Finland is close to, like it's in Scandinavia, right? So there's like,
yeah, so
there's no snowboarding in Denmark. I know that. I've looked into it. My grandparents lived
yeah,
there.
so I mean, we got, you know, Sweden and Norway.
Yep.
Just the west of us, but Finland doesn't really have big mountains. We have, so once you go up in Lapland, we have more like bigger mountains, but they sort of these like flat hills.
Okay.
And then as soon as you cross the border to Sweden up north, the mountain starts getting bigger. You got like Riksgränsen and Ore, which is still not a big mountain, but it's bigger. And then you cross over to Norway. That's where you have the big mountains. So,
sick. So would you go there with your friends? Would you guys like plan road trips and stuff?
No, I mean we didn't have money, or like we're pretty, you know, you know, it's just. I mean, I had a great childhood, but we didn't like anything I wanted to do. My dad was like, hey, you know, if you want that, you know, you gotta, you know, here's what you gotta do. You know, you gotta find a job, and even buying snowboards, I had to earn my money. So
that's cool.
So it's like 12, 13, my dad had a construction company, so I was working for him.
Yeah.
And
as a laborer, like
yeah, like and it was like soon as everybody broke off from school, I would work pretty much the whole summer.
Oh man!
And in the fall, I, you know, buy a snowboard or anything like that. And then it was probably 95, maybe was the first like sort of like organized bus road trip to Stryn.
Yeah.
in Norway.
Yeah.
And I paid that myself, of course.
That's good though.
And that was, I think that was started to be kind of an era that I was like, okay, like this is it, you know, like I've really loved snowboarding, and it wasn't like I wanted to be a pro. That
Right.
felt like it was always, it was maybe a dream, but it wasn't like tangible.
Sure.
But it was at the same time, like, it was the time that I still, like, I wanted to start work towards that, you know, like getting better. And so 95, we went to Struan in the summer. There's a summer camp. And
Who would have been on the glacier in 95? It would have been a big group of people, right? Like cool people.
yeah, I mean, you had a contest there, and there was like Daniel Frank.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
you know, Jamie wasn't there then. I think Jamie Lynn just had where he did that cover shot for Transworld.
Yeah.
Over the road gap, and you start hearing all the stories of like Jamie and Johan Olofsson, and yeah, it was it was sort of like a first real experience of like that whole, and then seeing Daniel and some of the other pros, and yeah, it was a cool time.
It was a summer camp, right? Like it was like a summer camp like you'd have at Mount Hood or at Whistler.
Yeah, yeah, but like not very organized.
Right.
I think like we had a pipe designated to our little camp, and we're sharing a camp with some other campers.
Yeah.
And we show up, and it's like literally a square. and it's like there's shovels, like, you know. So we have to dig our own pipe.
Right.
And you know, you're there for maybe a week, so it took us probably like 3 days just to get the pipe. But it's not, you know, it's not going to be perfect because I mean, dig like a 150-yard pipe.
That's a crazy.
So like you end
camp.
up like these super like quick trannies where you kind of you start at the, you know, the vert and start digging, but then the bottom transition is super tight because.
And it's not consistent. You got one wall that's kind of one way and another wall that's kind of another.
But it was kind of cool. That was part of that time, and it's like nobody never complained about anything. Like it was.
No, you're excited
we're
to
just
be there.
stoked.
Yeah,
like, we're there, and it's like the energy was amazing, and you just like building this thing as a group of friends, and it's just like this sort of like collective mission that where everybody's on, and. Yeah, it was a cool time.
Yeah, that's sick. That's sick. So is that like the first place that somebody would have noticed that you were like a breakout rider compared to your friends?
I don't think. I mean, that was like the first time I was riding pipe too. Really, you know. And we never had a pipe at our mountain, so that was sort of like the first exposure to that, and then. It must have been like 96 so my best friend Timo Aho, he started competing like year before. I think it must have been like 95, and I went couple of the contests with him, but I didn't want to do contests. I was not interested, and it was like intimidating, and never had ridden pipe, and so 96. I think it was his dad who signed me up for one of the contests that I was with him.
Yeah.
And he's like, "You're doing it."
Oh, that's crazy.
And I did the contest, and I think I ended up like maybe 9th place or something like that.
Nice.
And I was like, "Whoa, crazy!" Like I'd ridden like, you know, maybe 5 days half pipe in my life. And I was like, "Well, this is not too bad." And so I ended up competing that season, and I did pretty decent. Like I ended up winning a contest.
Nice.
And I broke my board. I just won a contest, and then I broke my board, and I was like, crap, I don't like have money to buy a new one. And so I started sort of figuring out like if I could get a sponsor, and I did this sort of like a quick inventory of like who's riding for who, and like what distributors have what riders and what they do, and like trying to figure out a little hole where I could maybe. And so I reached out to this distributor. He was a Lamar Snowboards distributor.
Oh, sick.
and he had like Decline and a couple other things, and he had a few riders, but they weren't, you know, really killing it, or, you know, it was just like, it's like maybe I could like fill a little hole in there.
Yeah.
And so I reached out to him. I wrote a little letter to him. He actually sent me the letter.
No way,
it's
you have it
somewhere.
back. Oh, that's amazing.
And so when I called him, this like must have been like sort of like assistant answered, and I told him my story, and he's like, no, he's got the best riders. He's not interested. And I was like, okay, well, like if you could have him to call me back, you know, if there's any chance. And so then he called me back, and I've told the distributor my story, and I was very adamant what I needed. Like I didn't need one board, I needed the second board for backup. I needed like all this stuff. And then Yari was like, whoa, like, you know, who's this kid? Like he's like setting up these
he's thinking
demands.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, I can't go to a contest, and then, you know, if my board breaks, I don't have a backup board. And, and anyways, he went back, and he's like, oh, like, I don't know, something like, I want to help out this kid. Like he seems like he knows what he wants. And so he totally hooked me up, got me 2 snowboards.
What boards were they?
They were, I think one of them might have been a Hetzel.
Yeah.
And one was, no, it was I think it was Kevin Jones, pro model.
Oh, damn. Yeah.
And so and then from there, things started happening pretty fast. It was then 97. So I got sponsored 96. Then 97, I started competing, doing mostly half pipe at the time. And that was not my specialty, but that was sort of like the only way of kind of getting noticed.
Yeah, of course.
So that was sort of like the route out.
What would your specialty have been? Like jumping?
Yeah, was always what I was like all the videos and jumping and like, you know, just big air slope. No, well, I mean, we didn't have slope stuff, but just like hitting jumps.
Just big air,
like rails and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, right.
And so 97, I start going some of because it's like the point system. Once you get points, you get access to go like these bigger events in Europe, and so I start doing some of that and getting more points, like doing pretty well on some of those contests. And then there was Junior World Champions, and halfpipe was in Finland.
Oh, no way.
And then the distributor, who was a Lamar, Yari, the distributor, called the Lamar team manager in the US to come over and watch the contest.
Sick.
And that was Steve Astafin.
Oh,
so
awesome.
Who ended up being my agent for my whole career.
Yeah.
So he came and I got second, which allowed me to get a wild card to go to US Open.
Oh, damn.
So he came to Finland, I got second, and then he's like, okay, I'm going to take you to Stratton.
Yeah.
That's like a week later.
Oh, damn.
And so
that happens fast.
Yeah, so we sat down, we had a dinner with mom and dad, you know, with the distributor and Steve Astafin, and it's like, okay, like
How old are you at this point? Are you still in high school?
Yeah, high school.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to miss a week of high school.
Yeah, so
with no notice.
Which I had no problem with. And so so that was like the first big trip.
And how'd you do at the Open?
I totally sucked. But it was pretty rad because it was, you know, that's when I met, you know, all the whole crew, and I was sponsored by Oakley too, so I stayed at Oakley House, and I met like Bjorn and like like Terry and like the whole crew, and it was just, I was just absorbing everything. It was a lot to take as a first trip, and
hell yeah.
I didn't really speak English at the time, so you just kind of put in this situation where it's like kind of overwhelming, and you know, doing the US Open where it's like all your idols are there, and
there's people lining up and down the pipe, and people climbing the trees to watch and shit. Like,
total chaos. So that's sort of like, it wasn't like that was big, you know, game changer for me as far as didn't do that well or anything like that.
But it was a big trip.
Yeah.
And
And I think Steve is like, okay, maybe there's some potential with this kid. And then that summer I went to Mount Hood. We had a photo shoot there, and they had those massive kickers, at the time. And I was just sort of doing my thing, and that's where like Steve and some of these other riders were like, okay, like this kid can do a couple things. And
trying to think of what era that is, of like that's 97, 98 kind of thing.
So
it's big. The stuff is like, that's 2-3 years after Daniel was there doing all the rodeo stuff.
Right, yeah.
It's like the jumps are getting so insanely big.
Super big.
It's nuts.
Yeah, and so I was with, it was a Lamar shoot. It was mostly me and Kevin.
Yeah.
But there was like Mac Dog crew, like LeBlanc and those guys filming, and it was super fun. But yeah, I was just sending it because like had this perfect jump, and I was like, oh my god, like this is so much fun. So I just went at it, and I think we were mostly shooting photos, but that was sort of like the first, like,
that's the make or break time too, right? Like if you go on a trip, and then you were talking about that Jamie Lynn cover shot, and I've said it a few times on the show that I think Brushy was there, and that was where the jump got too big for, like, Brushy's like, nah, it's a little too big. I'm not jumping over a road.
Yeah.
It's cool. I'm fine. No, you guys go ahead. But like if you show up to Mount Hood, and the biggest thing that's going on at Mount Hood, you're like, I'm on this. I'm excited to hit this. I've always wanted to hit something this big, and now here it is.
And I think the other thing too
noticed,
for me was I was stuck doing half pipe for so long, and that was really not my thing, So that was sort of the first time I got to do what I loved, and had these perfect jumps, and so I just went
Mount
nuts.
Hood in the summer is just such a beautiful spot too. Hey.
Yeah, it was fun, and but it was interesting era too, because it was at the time there was Hetzel, Stevie Alters, Jimmy Halapoff, Kevin Jones, and so we were staying in this compound little apartment unit, and dude, these guys were going freaking crazy, like just sending it at night,
at night, every night was like they had a reputation to uphold.
Yeah, and then you have this Finnish kid, it's just like, what's going on here?
Mayhem.
So it was interesting, introduction to the whole snowboard scene, so to speak.
How old are you at that point? That's like a summer or two later?
Must have been like 18, maybe.
Yeah. So when you're going back to Finland, are you checking in with your buddies, and they're like, what was it like? Oh my God, like US Open. Did you meet so-and-so or whatever? Like, are they really psyched for you? Or is your crew kind of, people are starting to do other things? And
yeah, I think that was the time when, like, even a few years before that, we started as a pretty, there was a lot of talent where we grew up.
Cool.
Considering where we, conditions and like the terrain.
Yeah.
There was a couple of really amazing riders, but then I think it was like when like 14, 15, it's like people start dabbling in different things, and
they got to make moves.
Yeah, and it's like, it's like riding that 150 vertical feet hill. It's like you got to be pretty determined to like try to make it, keep it interesting year after year.
Totally.
So a lot of people kind of went different ways, and that was the time already. Like my friend Timo, he just got sponsored by Silent Snowboards.
Rad. So
he was kind of doing his thing. I was doing my thing. So 98. That was the year of the Olympics.
Right.
And that was...
How did you do?
So
did
that
you do
was
pretty good?
So that was my last sort of like pipe era.
Yeah.
So I qualified into the Finnish team. I think it was like 2 weeks before we go in Nagano. It was crazy. They already had their team, and then I ended up doing really well on some of the contests leading up to Nagano.
Sick.
So I ended up getting a spot. I think it was like a couple weeks before the contest, which is crazy.
Had you been to Japan before?
No. So I got the spot. It was me, Sebu, Lexi Litovara, and Markus Hurme.
Nice.
Yeah, so that was the crew.
That's a sick team.
And it was funny because it's when we flew from Helsinki to Tokyo, we shared a flight with a bunch of other athletes. So they were like the cross country guys, and
right.
and they were like shaking their like protein shakes and all this stuff. And then Cebu is just like, oh my gosh, he got so smashed, like just drunk. He was just like fucking with all these guys, and like it was like such a separation. We're just like, we're so out of place,
right?
Because they had like the personal coaches, and this is a big deal, right? Going to Olympics, and for all of us, even for me, it was sort of confusing. It's like, okay, it is exciting, it's cool, but at the same time, like, I don't know, like it's kind of weird. Like, why do we go to Olympics? And
halfpipe's not even your thing.
It's and it's like I don't even care that much, and it's like, okay, I know it's a big thing, Olympics, but like I came from skateboarding, so that was like we're core skateboarder kids, and then there was sort of that like rebel thing, and then Terje boycotted, he didn't go, and so there was this whole thing, and it's pretty funny, and Cebu kind of set the presence for snowboarding.
The image of snowboarding.
Then it was the opening ceremony. That was the highlight. So it's obviously a big deal because it's everybody's on the same uniform, and you like Finland. So we just walk into the ceremony, and the camera's on Finland, and all of a sudden Cebu just rips his shirt off, and he's got this Welcome Stone t-shirt. Oh, it was so funny. He almost got kicked out of the team, but
how crazy is that he almost get, you know what I mean? Like it's like snowboarders like you were in the Olympics with somebody who's trained their entire life on one discipline the whole time, and they're so excited to be there, and then you're like, it's not even really, I'd rather it be hitting a jump.
Totally. And the funny thing too, we stayed in the main village, which is kind of cool, but it's like sort of this makeshift town,
right?
So, but I don't know exactly what reason, but we got the whole snowboarding crew got taken away from the village, and they put us in this hotel. So we're in a hotel in the mountains with like pretty much nothing to do with Olympics,
right?
So now we're like, all the snowboarders staying in this resort, like just by ourselves. Like it was kind of weird. And then that was we were right at the resort, and it was just Japan style. It was just snowing every day. It was insane.
Rad.
Nobody would go snowboard, so I would snowboard pretty much by myself. And the only snowboarder that I saw was riding every day was John Simon.
Oh, sick.
So I'm like, okay, let's ride. And we'd ride POW every day, do the practice, do an hour practice the pipe, and then we just go straight POW. But none of the other guys would go ride.
Were they afraid of getting hurt, or they just weren't into it?
I don't know if they were into it or what, but I was just like, hell yeah, like this, I'm riding powder for the first time. Like,
in Japan
like,
too,
blast.
Right? Yeah, Japan powder's epic. Oh, that was your first time in like deep POW?
Deep POW, yeah. And they're like all the locals are spooked about the trees.
The trees, yeah.
I think it has changed a little bit, but it's like at the time, like nobody would go trees, and we're like, are you kidding me? Like,
there's no.
So we're just riding like on track POW every day. It's insane.
That is the best Olympic story that there could be, right? Is that you go to the Olympics, you're not too stressed about the contest. There's POW everywhere, and nobody's riding it.
Yeah, super fun.
That's epic.
And then the contest day, the pipe was awesome, but it's nothing what they are now.
It was pretty small. I remember
super small.
it was, but it was like gorgeous.
Yeah, it was
But it was a terrible day too. It was like
terrible day.
rainy.
So like I've been riding pretty good. I had my run dialed. I felt like, okay, maybe I can, have a chance here.
Sick.
And then it rained that day, and so I got into the finals. I qualified maybe like, I don't know, pretty like top 5, I think, or something like that.
Dude.
So it was like, oh, it was decent. And then my first run, and at the time it was on the finals, it was two runs and both counted. So it was a combined.
Yeah.
Because now I think it's 3 runs and the best one counts. Right?
Wow. Yeah,
or something like that.
I don't even know, but
now it's 2 runs. It was 2 runs and it was a combination of combo. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's no room of error. If you fall, you're out.
Yeah. So that means for the listeners, if you did just think that through, right? You can't really go for it at the Olympics because you've got to put down 2 runs that you can land every single thing.
Exactly.
You're not going to try anything where you even have a chance of sketching because you've got to land every single trick of both final runs. It's a bad format.
Yeah, totally. And so it was raining, so a lot of people were eating shit. Oh, so the whole flat of the bottom was like this like mush.
Oh, shitty.
So when I had my run, I made it all the way down. So then I was going into last hit. I was going switch. I was going to do like switch back 5. And so I dug my heel going switch on the, I dug my heel on the flat and just ate shit on the flat. And I was like, that's it.
On your last hit.
Yeah. So that was like, all right, whatever. That's it. So, and then I did my second run. I just had fun with it and I ended up like 11th place. But there was like if you had sort of like you play the game a little bit,
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like after, like there's pretty much 10 people out. And then so you could play that game in the end, like where, okay, I just need to like land my run, be safe.
Yeah.
And then.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was pretty nuts because like Daniel Frank, he freaking killed it. Like I always was a huge fan of Daniel, but
yeah,
he just had a good style and had this epic run and. Yeah, he landed both runs, but he just didn't get scored. And
how come?
It was just it was under Ski Federation, and it was like this whole like
they didn't know
everything
what they were
was
watching.
super wacky. And, it was just it was a really weird scenario, the whole thing. And
how did he do? Did he get 3rd or something?
I think he got maybe 3rd.
Yeah.
So John Simon, that I've been riding powder. Never really
Nobody
knew the
really
guy.
Knew.
No,
nobody really knew who
so
he was.
he ended up winning it, and which is awesome for him.
He did really well with it. I think that it really he's had a long career of like being that guy that won the Olympics, right? Which is sick. It's good.
Yeah. So it was a really interesting thing. It was kind of the whole thing was sort of a letdown for sure. I mean, I had a blast because I got to ride powder and
yeah. But generally speaking, you're looking at it going, man, maybe Terrier knew what he was talking about. These guys don't know what the fuck they're doing.
Yeah, it was pretty wacky.
It's crazy, like, because I did it maybe a week or 2 ago or a month ago, where I went and I watched the first Olympics, just the half pipe final run, and then the 2010 because that was in Vancouver, and I was like, holy shit! Like 12 years later, it was night and day. Mm-hmm. And then I thought it can't be any crazier now. And then I watched the last one, and I'm like, oh, it's crazier.
Oh, it's nuts, man! I'm so impressed. Totally blown away where it's at now. But Spencer O'Brien's a Canadian Olympian, and she was saying a lot of the girls that she talked to, they just train on airbags mostly. Mm-hmm. So like if they were in Japan and there was POW, they're like, no, thank you, which is crazy. So yeah, I heard that story from Dave Hatchett that you came over with a few other scanners to film, right? Because that was the thing was like. Mm-hmm. Transworld would have an issue that is like, the Scandinavians and I know that they scoped you out, flew you over, and filmed with you for a bit in the Tahoe backcountry, right? That first year, and
Dave was saying you could see potential, but like the landings were just like eating you up.
Yeah, so that was right after the Olympics.
Oh, cool.
And so I was
you
like,
hadn't ridden powder yet.
So I was like, I'm done with this. You know, like I didn't want anything to do with pipe after that. So, and that's when the opportunity came to come to Tahoe and film with hatchets.
How does that go? Do they call you or something?
No, so Lamar was already part of sponsors.
Right.
So they pay X amount, and then they can, you know, sort of get their riders into movies.
Yeah.
And so they already had like Jamie, Kevin Jones, Andy. So that was sort of like where the opportunity came. And then Yoni Mäkinen was already filming with Hatchet. So he sort of like put a word out for me too.
Oh, sick.
So I came in, I think it was like March. And so these guys already been filming obviously for, you know, good 3 months, and they're like on the peak of things.
They're building big
kickers,
and
I just been, you know, rambling and riding pipe, and you know, so just the fact that you come mid-season and ride powder with these guys who are just been killing it already.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a real eye opener for me. I think it was the first day we went to Tahoe Donner, and it was Kevin Jones, Noah Salasnek.
Wow.
I think Tom Burt might have been with us too, and we just went hiking in these backcountry spots, and they've sort of like dabbling some lines, and so like that was like I was so out of my element, right? I never been in the big mountains like that. And so I was like, sort of like Kevin was telling me what to do, and I was just like, this, like it was so hard, and like being in the steeper terrain where it's like, holy crap, like where do I go? What do I do? And like I had no awareness or sense of like what, like I was so out of my element.
Were you scared, or were you just like, I don't know what to do?
I was just completely clueless. And then, you know, prior to that, like watching all the videos, I wasn't necessarily a huge fan of like Tom Bird, you know, because I'm coming from like more freestyle.
Totally.
So it was like more like Devin Walsh and Peter Line and Ingemar Bachmann and the freestyle guys. So, and so when I went after the first day, like it totally put things in different perspective. Like watching Tom Burt ride.
Oh yeah.
I was like, oh my God, he's God. Like,
smoothness.
I was like, he's the best snowboarder in the world, but that never really translated in the videos.
I agree with you 100%. Yeah.
So that was super humbling for me. It was like, okay, like I need to like totally change my mindset, and so basically that end of the year, I was just sort of in the background with these guys,
right?
And obviously I was doing better when we were doing like the backcountry jumps, because that was, at least I could do, if I could get into the jump, I knew what I was doing
totally
without the landing part. But so that was tough. I was just eating shit all, just like I couldn't land one thing, I don't think, that whole like month and a half.
Wow.
And then it was that springtime, then I think it was Yoni. It was like, because I think Hatchets were like, this kid's like, we can see he can do stuff in the air, but like he's really like, I don't know if it's ever gonna happen for him.
Right.
And so Yoni was like, hey, like, you know, go right park with him, like just go shoot like squaw, and so we went, and there was like double line at Sierra, and then so we did some park stuff, and that was obviously when I was in my element, like I can do this all day long.
Totally.
And that's where Dave and Mike were like, okay, like this kid is good, like we just need
yeah we want to take this and put it back there.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and that was end of that season. So that year I didn't have a video part and nothing, so that was sort of getting to know people, and like,
was that hard to go back and have film with the Hatchets and not be in the video?
No, because I already knew that I came in mid-season, so I knew there's no way. Like, I kind of had.
You knew what you
and
had on film.
I had the first day the reality check, and that also showed me what it takes to make a video part, like the frequency of like the footage you get.
Totally.
You know, seeing these guys like a few weeks. I'm like, oh, around here. Like, it takes time. Like, it's not like you're just going to get 10 shots a day.
Yeah.
But it was an awesome experience, and knowing what it takes, and then just seeing the whole operation, those girls running, like waking up at 4 and super pro. So that kind of teed me off for next year, 99, and that was the year when I got the Transworld video part of the year. And,
sick, dude.
And so I think that's when things really clicked.
Yeah.
Like, I had a couple rough days at the early season, but I spent the whole year with hatchets. Didn't really do any contest.
Nice.
I was just fully dedicated for filming. And it was kind of cool too, because it was Richmond Every, one of the filmers. He was kind of the young kid too. So like me and Rich kind of clicked, and so we ended up sort of working together. And it was Yoni too, which has helped me because I had this Finnish homie with me. And that was just a blast. Like, and those times too, the winters were just unbelievable. I mean, we had so much snow. And I loved the program that hatchets were on. Like, after every storm, like, no matter what, even if it was Bluebird, perfect conditions, we always went and wrote squaw one day after storm.
Rad.
So we're riding tons, and that I think was a huge part of what put me in the track of like learning how to ride powder, because the fact that we're snowboarding so much.
Yeah.
Always, and you warm up because you ride squaw all day, riding pow, and then next whatever window you had, you film, so your legs are warm up. You've been riding powder, so it was just it was awesome.
That's so
year.
Cool. Yeah, I've never been to Tahoe. I'm going next week. I'm really excited. I've got a couple of people that I'm going to link up with there
that's awesome,
to guide me through. You know, like you can't just go and find your way around mountains. You need to have somebody that knows what's up. We were talking about that yesterday. I'm really excited. So did that Tahoe year keep you in the United States? Is that when you decided, okay, I'm going to get my paperwork in and do my taxes here and do all that stuff? Like,
yeah, so that wasn't full time yet. So that was I was just coming here for the winter months.
Yep.
And then I'd go home. So I did that for a while. So I ended up filming with hatchets in 2000. I signed with Burton.
Sick.
And nothing really changed. I was still filming with TV, the hatchets crew, and doing a little bit of. I was doing some of the slope style, like X Games and US Open.
So back into the competitions, did you kind of like that?
I liked that because it was bigger in slope style, so that was more what I've liked anyways.
Yeah. And now you're riding beside, because that's a transition time too. Like Peter might have still even been in it to that last little bit there.
Yeah, it was Peter. Kevin was killing it.
Kevin was just destroying everywhere.
Yeah, and it was like I was spending a lot of time with Kevin, so it was kind of like we're not necessarily competing, but it was just like that's who I was riding with.
That's the level you're riding
so
at.
That was everywhere I was going.
Day-to-day.
I was with him, you know.
That's
So I
sick.
just watched him what he's doing, and it's like, all right, this is what we're doing.
He's fun to ride with too, right? Like
Super
he's
fun.
just like silly and fun and dorking around on little things, and then just once he gets in the air, he's so good.
Yeah, and it was fun too as far as like all the contests went, because nobody practiced or trained for contests. We're all filming backcountry, and then you show up in the X Games, do practice day before, and then do the contest, and everybody just splits and goes back on they filming projects.
That's crazy.
So it was fun for that too. It wasn't serious or anything like that.
Was the contract with Burton like significantly more money? Were you all of a sudden just going like, oh shit, and now I'm making money, I got to start thinking about buying a house or like putting money away? Or was it enough of, you know, you were getting enough through Lamar that it wasn't just, because I think I would go crazy if I got like all of a sudden I have money. I don't know. I'd want to go Heli or something, go ride powder all the time.
Well, it was it was interesting because the 99 I had like a killer year. Like I was winning contests, and then I had the video part of the year, and so things were like kind of going my way.
Yeah.
And so Lamar was shifting. Jamie Salters bought the company, so that was going that direction. So we knew that I had to do something.
Yeah.
And Steve that's when he started the family.
Right.
It was this kind of first, I guess, official, like the agency in snowboarding world.
Yeah.
And so he had me and Kevin Jones at that time. And so I was working with Steve and like trying to get these different contracts. And so we actually piled up, like, you know, I had like pretty good offers from, I think it was 32 for boots.
Yeah.
Then we had a couple different options for boards. It might have been Liptech, and then one was like a Rossignol. Then there was a couple clothing deals, but that was like a decent chunk of money.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we ended up talking with Burton, and so now we had on the table where like Burton contract was a lot lower compared to like if I went through
Board,
all these
boots,
bindings,
exactly, clothing.
So now
right,
I'm like, okay, like I have a decision to make. Like, am I gonna make this amount of money, but I'm with Burton?
Yeah.
Where I have a career, and if I get where I want to get in snowboarding, maybe I'll get what I deserve, so to speak.
Right.
Versus
right.
like here, it's like, okay, we don't know, are these companies going to be around? Like
that's a scary prospect.
But that was like almost double the money.
Oh wow!
So it ended up being pretty easy decision. Like it was, me and Steve flew to Vermont, met with the Burton crew. It was Barry Dugan was the team manager at the time, and so we sort of like, okay, let's make this 2-year contract and kind of see how things fall in place. Like, you know, we want to make sure we stoked on you, and it's like we like working with you, and it was similar for me. It's like, okay, like because I wasn't a Burton kid.
Right.
Like
you didn't grow up
I was
Burton.
a skater kid. So
Yeah,
like we
yeah,
always
yeah, yeah.
like Burton for me wasn't sort of like, it was never a dream, but
Gotcha.
I understood, like I loved the product.
Yeah.
I obviously loved, you know, the brushy, like the history Terrier. Like, I mean, Burton is the brand, right?
Definitely.
But I was more like the underground kid, like just into these little brands,
Smaller brands.
So
right,
that was
right.
like a kind of like, I'm going like this giant, so to speak, you know, this big brand. And
What pushed you to decide on Burton? Was there something that you...
so I think what it was, it's like, it's the sort of security, you know, like I can really just focus snowboarding. The gear is obviously insane.
Yeah.
And they invest a lot of money in their riders, and they just had the program dialed, you know? So, and I felt like maybe, you know, if I go with Burton, like then I can really just focus in snowboarding. I don't need to worry about like dealing with these like 6-7 different sponsors
managing
being going
sponsors
left and right. And, you know,
Yeah.
so that was sort of like the final decision.
What was the first board that you got and set up from Burton?
It's custom.
Yeah.
So I wrote with custom boards, and it was AK, and that was 2000, and that was like killer year for me. Like I won X Games, I won US Open, I had like I was filming, and those 2 years that I had the contract, like I had probably one of my best 2 years. It was just like things were popping. Like it was awesome because I had no stress as far as that went, you know, and I obviously appreciate the money coming in, but like that was never really my goal,
The primary
goal.
Right.
Like I was sort of like, it was part of the decision making, you know, but it was not the priority. And it was kind of funny because I wasn't even paying attention really what I was making at the time, because I was all I cared was snowboarding.
Yeah.
And then I'd come home, like being in the States in the winter, and then my dad's like, okay, like, hey, we're gonna go buy an apartment.
Rad.
And I'm like, oh, really? Like, and so like my dad sort of helped me to put like every time, as soon as I had enough money, we'd just go buy apartment in Helsinki.
That's insane.
And so, which was rad because I never had too much money to like spare.
Right.
All my money went, and I bought, you know, these apartments outright, and then, you know, rented them out or whatever. You know,
That's so smart. What did your dad do for a job? Like, what was his?
so he's
background?
he had a construction company.
Oh, that's right. You already
Yeah.
said. Right.
Yeah.
So did he already invest in some properties himself as well?
No, he was just he was sort of like a project manager.
Yeah.
But he had his construction company, but he wasn't investing. He was just building stuff for people.
Totally. And just
but yeah, I mean, I was very fortunate because I didn't, you know, he put me in a good place for
Rad.
that.
Yeah.
I didn't blow my money because I had nothing to blow.
I think Mikey Rent said sort of the same thing. Like his first couple of checks, he was like a little kid.
Yeah.
He would go into Vancouver and buy like clothes and go like shopping. And then his mom was like, all right, we're going to buy you a place that's like takes up all your money. But at the end, you have a place that's, you know, worth all the money you put in.
Totally.
Yeah. So much smarter.
And so it was just simple everywhere around. Like I could really just focused in snowboarding more than anything else. Like I wasn't into the money side of things. And I had Burton, who was totally backing me. And that era too, like you had so much freedom. It was just amazing. Cause I mean, as long as you're producing, like if you're with the good crew and making shit happen and you're out there filming but I felt like there was this underlying trust from the company perspective, like your team managers, obviously they were on it, but they're like, yeah, you know, UC's working. And so it was just a pretty magical time because, you know, there's nobody really telling what to do or where to go. And we're just like, oh, well, let's go to Europe or, you know.
You'd watch and see where the snow is good and then,
then
go and hang out with friends and film. And
yeah, it was a good times. And that sort of was that robot food time. So it was with hatchets until, I think it was TB10, and then we split and we started Robot Food. And that was sort of like I was mentioning before, it was that like a pinnacle of like freedom and fun, and it was such a good crew. And
those movies were just next level.
We just had so much fun.
Yeah, I talked with David on the show, which he's just like such a creative mind and such a positive person, putting energy out there. But talking with Mouse yesterday, I never even thought of this before, but like you would have had to have a conversation where Dave or Mike calls you up and goes, okay, where are we going this year? Like, when are you going to be in Tahoe? And you're like, hey, we've started our own project.
Yeah.
Did that happen? Was there a moment where you had to do that?
It was hard because hatchets, like I'm so grateful, I think, for my whole career because of hatchets.
Of course.
The way they work ethic, just everything I learned from those guys, I think set me up for my rest of my career.
Right.
So I have this like huge appreciation and respect for those guys. But I think it was at the same time, like we started sort of having like our own little vision, the way we saw snowboarding, instead of like that sort of, they had their formula, which was working.
Yeah, totally.
But we sort of felt like we wanted to show snowboarding a little bit in a different light.
Totally.
And we couldn't quite get that.
It was a different creative process. Yeah. You could see with Robot Food that there was a community. You guys were all snowboarders, which was the same with the Hatchets, but the Hatchets were kind of like a top-down company where there's a couple of guys telling everybody this is what we need and making all the decisions for like who gets a part and where it goes and the music and it's going to be heavy metal and it's going to, you know what I mean? Like and there's going to be this much, big mountain stuff mixed in with this much freestyle stuff. Whereas the Robot Food was like a whole different creative process, it seemed like. Yeah,
so I don't, like, as far as like the whole transition from Standard. I think Jess Gibson took a lot of heat for that because I think they felt like he sort of like went rogue and started his own thing,
Right.
which wasn't totally the case. But obviously, Jess was working closely Hatchets because he was one of their filmers.
Yeah.
So I think he ended up probably taking a lot of that heat. But I get it too because it was pretty much half the standard crew just left and took this thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm sure it was heavy, but we were just so passionate to sort of like start something different.
Yeah. It came through in that film
Yeah,
too.
so we just sort of put our energy there. And Hatchets, they got the next era of snowboarders like Arrow and Heikki and all these guys, and they swooped them and it was all fine. And but yeah, that was super fun. And I think like those days we snowboarded so much. Yeah. And I think was like I think we're like I felt like that was like my pinnacle time in snowboarding, like when I felt like I was like snowboarding was part of me.
Yeah.
Like we were living it, we're thinking about it, we're like the whole crew was so on the same page, the way we saw snowboarding, we were riding tons. So like just so in tune with snowboarding in general.
Would you guys like ride and film and edit like all together as a team kind of thing?
Kind of, yeah. And we travel together too, which is cool. So we'd split in like 2 crews, but if we go to Europe, we'd go Europe with like a crew of like 10 people.
Awesome.
And we would stay in the same places, and it was just fun.
That sounds like the best.
Yeah, and it was like you said, like Benedict, like such a, super creative, super smart. And then you had like Travis Parker, who was like totally just eccentric, just had his like quirky, but awesome, And then you had, you have all these like very different personalities.
Yeah.
But somehow it just worked great, and I think he sort of like you brought all these different elements into one cohesive little video. It came out awesome.
I remember of that video, I just remember the size of the jumps in that being like, again, another level up. Mm-hmm. And the stuff that was happening in those videos, it just like I had lost the edge of it. Like for me, I was still just like I'd lost the edge of it years and years before that. But there were a few times where snowboarding, you just kind of went, it can't get any bigger than this. Mm-hmm. This is as big as it can go, and then it would go a whole other step bigger. And that era was like huge airs. And that was the thing too, was like no hand touches. Mm-hmm. Like you weren't seeing body drags or nothing made it in the films. That was something that Hatchet and Standard and MacDog always had. Like maybe not the first few, but they would. It was only the A footage of the like it was really just a little bit. And the Robot Food movie, the first one came out, it was just A footage, but more fun.
Yeah, but it was, I mean, we had like all these little butter sections,
right,
and like
sure,
little
yeah.
I think my era as a like I was pretty unlucky those years because I got hurt.
Oh no!
But I think it was after Bang and Lame, both years I've kind of had like a mediocre. I didn't have full years seasons because I've got injured or whatever. But
what was the injury?
I think it was my ankles.
Ugh.
So I've had like 6 ankle surgeries.
That's brutal.
Since, but it was a lot of that, like, and I think it was a lot of the, like, Pierre Vicbrick was bringing that. It's like, yeah, like, it's cool to have bangers, but, like, let's really show sort of that element, like, when you guys just riding with friends. So let's show some of that. So we would film just cruising in a park and doing butters and, like, just kind of like a mini shred style.
Totally.
And so mixing that with some of the, like, the big jumps. I think that was sort of like the magic formula.
And quirky music too. That quirky music was so dope. Like it was just like it was a fun video to watch. That was the thing about it, was that you go into any snowboard shop in that era, those were the videos that were playing, because before that it would always be a Mac Dog or a standard film, and then these films were fun to watch. Like every time you'd look up, there'd be something cool happening.
So that was a fun era for sure. And then, but then I think that
were you still on Burton through all that stuff?
Yeah.
So after the 2-year contract's up to you, negotiate something like epic.
Yeah. So that was sort of like when our initial plan kind of was fruitful. You know?
Yeah. Like so, you worked for 2 years.
And it was. Yeah, it was fair, and that was sort of like, I think I did. It might have been 5-year contract or 4-year, but it was like
that's a big one.
It was a big one for sure.
Cool. And well deserved. Like you were right there. You were the Burton A rider of that era. It's so sick, dude.
Yeah. So it was, and I got my pro model, and I think that was doing well. And again, it's like, it was sort of a byproduct, because we're just, I was able to snowboard and have fun. And again, like, that was great. It set me up for life, with Burton. I'm forever grateful.
It was a good move.
But it wasn't like a really, a priority. Like, it sort of like came just because we're just focusing what we're doing and having fun with it.
Yeah. That's pretty rad.
But, that's sort of like when things, and that's kind of how I see like my career. I think after like period time, you kind of have to change things.
Sure.
So like when I had Hatchets, TB, that whole era, that I learned a lot. It put me in the right path.
Yeah.
Then it was the robot food era, which is super fun and free, and then it was like, okay, then that kind of became repetitive. So it's like kind of like, it sort of felt forceful to try to duplicate this, like, hey, we're having fun.
Totally.
Like, and so like me and Villa went with Mac Dog, Brad Kramer, our friend. He started working with him. So that was when me and Villa, so those guys still did the after lane, but we bailed that year, me and Villa, and we went to do the Mac Dog.
Rad.
And I think that was sort of like, let's not like get serious, but it's like, let's do like some, like, let's go film some big shit.
Yeah.
And so that was sort of that era. And a lot of things changed. I got married 2005. I think things started kind of taking shape, like more like shifting a little bit more like not a work mode, but like really taking it like as a like career, so to speak.
Yeah, of course.
Like I sort of started like, okay, like we're probably gonna have a family, and it was just like this total different shift.
There were different eras where you felt like you liked the change, like you didn't want to keep doing the exact same thing, right? Like half pipe was 100%.
Right.
I'm not doing that. And then the standard days, cutting your teeth with, like, who gets their first video part is like Transworld part of the year. That's so dope. You must have been so hyped.
Oh yeah, that was like a dream come true. I never expected that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when you do that, now okay, I'm going to be a professional snowboarder for a while here.
Yeah. So it was unreal, and I think he, like I said before, coming from Finland where everything feels so far away. Yeah. So the dream wasn't like really. It was such a far dream.
Yeah.
And I actually remember like one of the old Burton movies where JG had a like a little thing about like him working for Burton, and his whole work, like, he's building these boards and testing, and that to me was like, oh my God, like imagine if you ever worked for Burton like that, like where you just get paid to ride and test different boots and bindings and boards. Like, holy shit, like that would be insane.
I think that's what Craig was doing towards the end too, actually. Like, because obviously Craig Kelly had left competitions in the middle of winning them all.
Yeah.
And went and explored the backcountry and kind of did his own thing. But I know he was product development, like,
oh yeah, deep
the whole time. Whole time, right?
Yeah.
So,
So it was funny, just like how it went from that, like being a kid, and then JG was actually the one who was building my boards at Burton.
That's amazing.
It's been a trip for sure. And but I think it's like I mentioned before too, like that sort of like putting your mindset into something and then change it and then do something totally different. Or it might not seem like it's totally different, but it's like sort of like in your mind, it's like, okay, now I can put my mind in here for the next 3 years, and then let's shift things, you know?
Yeah.
And that, I think, has always been really important for me, like approaching snowboarding or my career or my life, that it's like, let's keep moving forward. You know, I don't want to, don't look back, but like what's coming next, and let's get excited about that.
At what point did you settle, and where did you settle into the U.S.? Like, was that early 2000s?
No, so 2005, we got married, and that was sort of like, okay, like we gotta make a shift. Like we want to have a family, we want to be somewhere, and for us, like it just wasn't an option to live in Europe, because I couldn't see Zoe or the family if I couldn't do back and forths. That's too heavy. So that's when we decided, like, yeah, let's come to US. Originally our plan was to go to Portland, and we actually we were there for 2 weeks. We were looking at houses. We put an offer in a house.
Yeah.
And it was just raining like 2 weeks. It was just nonstop.
Yeah, man.
But for Zoe, she's from England, and for some reason she had this sort of like idea of California. Like she really like had this idea like how everything's like fake and like it's, I don't know, maybe it was the TVs and but had this sense of like California, and she's like, I don't ever want to live in California, but she's never been. So anyway, so we're like, Portland, put an offer in a house, and then Steve Astafan calls me. It's like, hey, like I'm going on a trip for 10 days, and I need somebody to come and take care of my dogs. Like, would you want to come and hang out in Encinitas in my house?
Sick.
And he's got like super nice house in Encinitas.
Yeah.
So then we're like, oh, let's just go,
Check
hang
it
out
out
in California. And I knew everything about this place because I've been coming here since like 97.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Yeah. Since those days.
Yeah.
With like
so I was like, this is a good place. Like, Encinitas is pretty good. So we came down here and we just had the best time. Like,
she fell in love with
surfing,
this spot.
and like his weather is good, and
I can't believe, is it always like, okay, are the waves always as good as they are right now? Like the waves are really good, right?
Well, we had a little bit of storm, so now there's some swell, but it's pretty consistent. Like you can pretty much surf.
How come there's
day.
not like 50 people out there? I went there at 7 this morning. It's glassy. It's peeling. I'm like, how come there's not one person?
Well, there's when it rains, a lot of people don't want to surf when it rains because all the stuff comes out of the land, and so the water gets pretty, not nasty, but it's like
gross.
It's not the best time to surf. So some of the people don't surf when it's like all stormy, so they wait it out for a couple days. And
is it too cold to surf right now? No, right?
No,
like it's perfect.
62, 30.
Yeah. I was just blown away. I'm like, if this wave was, how come there's not like 50 people? Why isn't it crowded? Does it get crowded on the
summer?
On
it gets crowded. Yeah.
Summers,
But even then, it's like if you live here, you know where to go, when to go. It's
pretty wide, right? Like
there's
got
a lot of little spots. Yeah. So it's pretty sweet. But yeah, so that's sort of when we decided, like, okay, let's hunker down here.
Yeah. You call up Andy Hetzel and you're like, hey, Andy, I need a house.
Yeah, we bought a house here, and yeah, everything went pretty fast from there. Zoe was pregnant that year. We had our first son, 2006. Yeah, I was just fully like commuting, really.
How does that, affect your ability to fly around the world? Like, you're still 100%, like, this is my job, I'm going snowboarding?
Well, it was hard in a ways, because for Zoe, even though we loved living here, I think it took for her a while to kind of get adjusted and get your friends, and it's a different scene. Like, it takes a while to like really connect with people in the same way as she's used to from home.
Yeah, of course.
So that was tough, and so it took for a little while, like, kind of create her group of friends, and so that was sort of tough because she was here on her own with the a baby, and I'd be like, peace, gotta go snowboard.
Yeah.
And so I kind of felt bad, like, leaving her here, and like, you wouldn't say struggle, like, our life was great, but just she wasn't that happy because she did, just kind of alone.
Yeah, totally.
So it had its challenges for sure. But we always knew that, like, I was still fully in snowboarding, and we both knew, like, we were kind of setting us for life as well, what I was doing.
Yeah.
So she was super supportive. She was always, like, crazy supportive what I was doing. And we just always had to try to have this relationship where we just sort of make sure everybody's happy.
The balance.
The balance. And then we had the little guy came to 2008.
So between 2005 and 2008, I think 2005 would be that after lame year where you decide to switch.
Yeah, that was the Mac Dog.
And then you go Mac Dog. So now you're doing like the hard work in Mac Dog. Who was filming with you? Brad?
Mostly Brad. Yeah. So it was me, mostly me and Villa, and there was JP Solberg, Heikki. So and DCP was in the mix.
Fun.
Dirksen.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So we had an awesome crew. Brad, obviously, we go way back when. So that was sort of like, again, like, we sort of had our little micro crew in that crew.
Yeah.
So like McIntyre was working with like JP and Seth and Jeremy and those guys, and then we had our own little pocket.
And that's right about when the struggle starts for videos too, right? Maybe.
Yeah, it was early signs of that for sure.
It was starting to happen, right?
So it was slowly starting to shift, and I think so. It was when my younger son Theo was born. So that was 2008, and that's sort of like was like kind of like the end of the era.
It was so weird to see edits from last week. You know what I mean? Like, because we'd had 20 years of, like, you had to wait a year. Mm-hmm. You just had to wait. Yeah. And then the video would come out and you'd be like, okay, this is what they did last year. And then all of a sudden there were these edits that were like, holy shit, what are they going to put in the video next year then? And then you realize, oh my God, there's not going to be a video next year.
Yeah.
What the hell? That was crazy. That was a crazy time.
Yeah, so that was 2008. That must have been the last Mac Dog project, and then it shifted to Burton making their movies.
Yeah,
and that's when I got together, and that was again super fun. Sort of like next era.
It's a completely next era, right? And that's sort of where that's 10 years ago, but it's sort of where we are with movies now. It's really mostly a brand or a collection of riders from a few brands just sort of showing the lifestyle. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like those days where you go back to Mount Hood and now the jump is bigger and people are doing more. It's not like that as much anymore. Mm-hmm. It's more creative. People are digging more into like style and like, but then you see like random Instagram clips where you're like, holy shit, again, like what are they going to put in the movie if they're leaking the whole movie before the movie's out?
Right.
It's such a weird era now. And seeing stuff like spots where you guys went, people doing lesser tricks on those spots, just with like nicer light and like, and you're going, okay, I mean, fine. It's still beautiful. It's still cool. But I don't think the progression has stopped. I just think the progression is in a different spot now. It's like Olympic half pipe riding or big air, like park jumps. Like you sometimes see the big sessions that they have on those like enormous kickers. And you're like, okay, all the factors came together. They had the right builder. They had the right, you know, like the wind was good. The sun was out. But you don't really see stuff in the backcountry that's like pushing, like what can they do? They can't get any bigger. Like when I look back at, you know, Damian Sanders and Sean Farmer in the Sierras in the early 90s, the cliff stuff got as big as it could possibly get.
Oh yeah, it was gnarly back in the days.
It got more technical and smooth, and you're not going to butt check or fucking flip on the landing, but it never got that big again, I don't think. I don't know, maybe.
Well, I think it's a mix of things. I think obviously when it was a tangible thing, like it's a video or DVD, and it comes out certain time, it's like there's anticipation. The magazines work on, like, so there's that was like there's something physical, you know.
Yeah.
And then once that went away, you know, obviously it got harder, but there was still era of like the Burton movies when they're going online, and there's still people watching those. So like for us, if there was still, it kind of felt like it's still worth a while, you know?
Yeah, totally.
And so that was still fun, and felt like we sort of had a purpose, pushing ourselves and try to make things even bigger and like whatever.
Yeah.
But then for sure, like once things start sort of like going to that, like what's happening? Does it really mean? Does people even care? It's hard as a rider, it's hard to sort of like get inspired or motivated. It's like how, like, and for me at that point, it's like, okay, I got 2 kids. Exactly. I've done this for 15 years. Like, what is the sort of like, what are we doing here? You know, like, and I think it's, you know, when we're doing, you know, whether it was TV or Afterbang or MacDog, the companies, like, they were stoked. They were behind it. They're like, okay, like, go get a video part. It means a lot for us. It's important. And so there's that sense of like a mission for as a whole industry. Yeah. But then when that's going away too, when you feel like kind of like, even if I do this, are my sponsors stoked? Do they really care? Does people really care? You know, it's sort of like you start kind of spinning. It's like, what's the sort of like purpose here? Why are we doing this? Yeah. And so like that was in the sort of the end of like few years, I was having kind of struggle with that.
Did you ever have anything like what JP Walker experienced with PTSD, like a big crash, and then you got on top of a jump or a feature and you're just like, I don't want to fucking do this, or this is scary now, where it wasn't before? Or were you fortunate enough to make it all the way through without?
Well, I've pretty much went through it all the way to the end. Like I was going after it, but then that last year filming, it was like I was done. And it was that last week of filming, it was me and Mikey. We're doing Heli stuff in Whistler, and it was like the last day. It was sort of, we already had like a decent 3 days shooting, and the last day we still had Heli. So we were we're just gonna like dabble some stuff and see. It was kind of gray bird, so it wasn't like nothing was perfect anyways. We should have probably called it in the morning anyways.
Yeah.
But we went for it because we had the heli and whatever. So we got dropped off. We were kind of looking at this new zone, and we got dropped off at the top. And I remember closing a heli door, and it was like, this feels so like wrong right now.
Oh,
like,
weird.
I felt like I should not be here. Doesn't feel right. And like what we're riding wasn't nothing gnarly. It was sort of like warm up run. It was like, we don't know the conditions here. It's warm up, so we know that there's a chance that snow is kind of slidey.
Sure.
So we're like, well, let's just take a sort of like an easy mellow run and just kind of feel it out.
Safe,
and then we
like,
can
yeah.
sort of like start working from there if things look good and feel good. But I had this weird feel like it was just like didn't feel right. Like I should have called it.
Yeah.
And so it's like, all right, whatever. I mean, it's like, I'm like going in my head, like, this is super mellow I'm riding. Like, I totally know, like, where I'm at. So, and then Mikey was on this other zone, like, just a little bit further, like, you know, a few hundred yards. But his line was kind of, like, through the trees and, like, nothing technical, but if things would have slid, that would have been...
There were some terrain traps, yeah.
And for however it made sense for me to go first, I think Leyland was going to move or whatever. So I was going to ride first, and there was like this convex roller at the top. And so if it's going to go, it's going to go here.
Yeah.
Nothing went, and then I'm just sort of like riding powder, you know, through the runs. Nothing really. I think Leyland's still filming, but it's definitely not a film worthy.
Right.
And then all of a sudden in the middle, this whole slope just cracked. And we're like, you know, whole mountain was moving. And then luckily I carried enough speed, so I was kind of moving just a little bit faster.
Yep.
And then the front of the Avi started piling up. It was probably like 2 feet high. So I was able to go and like jump over the front of the Avi, and there was an exit on my right. So there was a high point. So I just like carved up, and I knew it was 100% out. Like no big deal. I look up, and it's this freaking huge chunks of snow, just like, you know, spring corn, like big cornice, like chunks of like, you know, size of like a car, you know, coming down. I'm like, if any of that would have hit you, like you would have been instantly dead. So like I'm looking, I'm like, holy crap, like that's crazy. And then I look it down, and we had the heli right there, and Leyland filming, and I think it was Adam. And from my angle, I could just see the snow just moving straight towards those guys.
Oh,
and then
shit.
then things went just like, you couldn't see anything for like 30 seconds because it was just like this massive cloud.
Oh, no.
And luckily, like the snow just banked like right in front of them, like 30 feet before us.
Oh, God.
And so anyways, that was kind of crazy. And then that, you know, there's two things. Like, I think if it was Mikey going first, I think it could have been bad because his situation, he didn't have the same exits that I had.
So what does he end up doing in that situation?
No, he got, we're done.
So they pick him up.
Yeah, pick him up. We went home. But that was like, for me, it was like, I'm done. Like, that's it.
Yeah,
I'm done.
Scary as fuck.
And it was scary. And kind of put everything in perspective. I think there's like leading up to that too, like what we talked about, the videos, like really not having a purpose.
Yeah.
Industry shifting, and then that happened, and I'm like, okay, like what do I want? Like, is it, you know, sort of like spinning in my head. And then I drove home, and I drove my truck straight to Toyota and swapped it to Prius. And I sent a photo to Mikey, and Mikey's like, "Huh? What's this?" I'm like, "Yep, it's Prius, new page."
That's incredible. Well, let's start on that page now too, because obviously you've always been environmentally conscious, right? It's kind of weird how we haven't made that good of moves in that direction as a society. It's just like we're not doing it right. I think we're I think what happened is we pushed everything down onto the consumer level. Like, if consumers just recycle these single-use things, which I didn't even realize until this year, that like a can, you think, a recyclable can, they probably use it 10 times, paint it 10 times, and then they melt it down. No, they melt it down every time. It's such
crazy.
a waste. So I think we could really do a lot better if we had policy change at the level of like, you can't do a single-use container. It just doesn't make sense for the world. Where did you first get the idea for Mizu?
Well, I think it's a like growing up in Finland where things like we never had. You can buy water in a grocery store or anything like that. So it's like everything is a little bit more simple. And like even like where I grew up, like our waste management was like my mom would like burn the cardboard stuff, and then we had a huge compost, so like everything, all the scraps would go in the compost. And so like just we never really, you put trash what you have to, but so it was sort of like this minimal way of living, just like not necessarily like because we had to, but it was just a way of living, you know? And so when I started traveling here to US and seeing like especially when, like, for instance, when we bought this house, like our neighbor had the truck come up and like bring these pellets of Arrowhead water bottles.
Oh yeah.
Just this
yeah.
huge, and like every week. So I'm like, the truck drives here, brings like 100 bottles of water. Like, I'm just like, that is insane.
You can drink the water from the tap, right?
Yeah, you put a filter on,
Yeah.
But just that whole concept, like, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And so for idea for Mizu, I think it was, partially because, just the way we grew up living in Finland, and then seeing our own footprint too, like seeing like, drinking water bottles, and like we had like, reusable bottles and stuff, but then still like once you're on a road trip like to Alaska or whatever, people buy water, and you look at your truck bed where everybody throws your stuff, and all of a sudden there's like 50 bottles. It's like,
man.
Okay, like this is so disgusting. Like this is like unnecessary waste. This doesn't need to be there. Like this can be all taken away by just using a freaking reusable container. It's just simple. So that's sort of where the idea came from, and it was with Brad. We're filming MacDog movies, and I was sort of like we both having the kids at the same time, and that's the time where you're sort of thinking like, what's better for your kids.
Totally.
You just
had you had an energy drink sponsor up to
I had,
that point?
yeah.
Who was your guy?
Rockstar.
Rockstar.
Yeah. And it's probably one of the only regrets in snowboarding. And I remember it was hard, but at the same time, like you taking it as a job too. So like
and they're paying good money.
They paying good money, but at the same time, it's like it doesn't feel like it's the right thing. And then that was like the time too when I started having kids, and that's where it was really like hit me like, I wouldn't want my kids. I wasn't drinking that, and I was like, I wouldn't want my kids to drink it. So it's sort of like the whole awakening to that point when you have your own kids, and
100%.
I was like, I can't be part of this anymore. So that's where we kind of, with Brad, everything sort of came together, talking about like, I want to do something about this, and talking about the general, like the container space. There was nothing really interesting. Like there was Nelagene and Clank & Teen just had started, but like there's no sort of like a brand in that space.
Right.
And for us at the time, it wasn't like, let's start this super successful big company or anything like that.
It's not the money thing.
It was more like, hey, like let's like, maybe if we start making this cool little brand, we start making bottles that like we like, maybe our friends will like, by like just sort of like starting from this tight little community, we can start minimizing the single use footprint in our community, and maybe it'll grow. And that was sort of the business plan. And all of a sudden, you know, it started growing, and we found ourselves like, you know, a few years later, like we were making bottles for like Hurley, Nike, Burton, and
that's right.
Like it shifted pretty fast, which is exciting, and that was like the era of like things were changing. I think people were starting to be a little bit more aware of environmental stuff, and just like what, like coming back to sort of like how it used to be, you know, like minimizing the unnecessary waste and just.
Yeah, Nicholas Mueller put me on the idea that water is alive, which is, it's kind of out there, esoteric, but we strip it of all its nutrients when we filter it, right? Like we use chlorine, and we kill anything alive in it. And I was like, I'm almost 50, man, and I'm like, holy shit, I never really thought about water before. Like you just grow up thinking, okay, the government knows what they're doing, and if we drink water from a stream or a lake, we're gonna get sick. So they have to process it, and then it comes out of a tap, and I'm grateful for that. But we're definitely going back, I think, to some of the things we lost in, you know, just this packaging society where everything is just like single use, like straws in plastic straws in a plastic thing.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It just doesn't make any sense at all. Like not at all, because there's no end use of that. That's going directly into a landfill, like forever. That seems so dumb. I remember reading a David Suzuki book where he was like, the planet is a cycle, like everything's in cycles. We're the only species that has like something that doesn't get used at the end, and we have a whole like society built on that. It's just a line. You make something, somebody uses it for a second, they throw it in a garbage. We put it in a pile.
Yeah, it's
what
nuts.
the hell is that? That's terrible. So yeah, I'm glad that was something that you guys thought of. When was Mizu started? 10 years ago now?
2008.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. So, yeah, and it really, we've stuck with that mission, the reusable mission. So we expanded the product line to obviously like the cups, and then now we have stainless steel straws, which is huge.
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
And then we have like utensils and like sort of like a pretty wide range of
how many SKUs these days?
So many.
Really?
Yeah, we're in 27 countries now.
Holy jeez.
Yeah, so it's pretty it's been a pretty fascinating.
What kind of time does that take up of your time? Like
so going back, so when I've finished with snowboarding, I went full time with Mizu back there with Tim Pogue, who's my business partner.
Oh, cool, from Ride.
Yeah, so he's my business partner, and I kind of went and took a lead on the marketing side of things. So just sort of like the creative marketing, content, all that stuff. And that was really awesome for me, because it was like I really got to know sort of like what really goes behind like products and
company,
the running the company and all the different bits and pieces of what it takes, learning all that, and it was fun too, because I was able to sort of like curate the brand, like not start over, but sort of like
scratch,
have somebody like, okay, like let's really think about this. Like, what is our mission? What is our content looking like? What do we want to speak? What is, just sort of like build the foundation again. So I had a blast with that for 3 years, and that sort of led where I am today, where at Mizu I started curating most of our content, creating content, And that was sort of where I fell in love with all that again. I started photography when I was pretty young. My mom was a photographer, and she worked in a photo lab. So I was super lucky when I was like 15, when I started traveling. Like I was able to shoot unlimited film.
Wow.
So I shot tons of film, and but then that kind of faded out after years when it went to digital.
Yeah.
I didn't do the digital shift. And then when I got back on Mizu, now I have an outlet for all this stuff that I'm shooting.
Yeah.
And then I was running e-commerce, so I've started seeing how I'm shooting content. Now I'm like translating that into sales and learning that whole side of things, which is super fun. And then on that side too, like I started doing like a couple mini shoots. I did like a little shoot for DC and a couple other brands while I was at Mizu, and so that sort of led me to start my production company and do that full time, and that transition again was sort of natural. Like I felt like I got things in place with Mizu, like, and then we brought some other people. We had to bring more people,
bigger company,
experienced people, and that was like sort of like a perfect time for me to move on, and that's where I talked to Brad, started talking like, hey, I want to have a production company where we can do like branded commercial video and photography. And then Brad was like, oh my gosh, this is like exactly what I want to do. Like he got stuck in sort of doing the corporate stuff for a while with the video side.
Yeah, like commercials.
Yeah, and obviously me and Brad started Mizu in the first place, and now we're back and like, hey, like let's do this.
Creative process and something new. Man, you've had a lot of good opportunities.
Yeah, so then we started Diving Board production company, and then I was still sort of like not part-time with Mizu, but still like really involved, which I still like in the back end. I'm still involved,
like board of directors.
Yeah, I don't have day-to-day role anymore, but I meet with Tim pretty frequently, and anytime there's any need or there's a project or anything I can help, I try to help as much as I can.
Input on new products and stuff like that.
Yeah,
too.
totally. I'm like super passionate about the brand and our mission, and
it's dope.
But then at the same time, I can sort of now focus.
Who came up with that logo with the drip logo?
So Brad's wife is Japanese, and that was we're trying to figure out the name. And then Mizu is water in Japanese.
Oh, it's perfect.
So Mayumi was like, oh, yeah, you should call it Mizu. It's like, oh, yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
And then that logo was sort of like a, natural evolution, with the water drip. And,
they sell it all over the place, hey? Like Mountain Equipment Co-op up in Canada has it. And
yeah, we do. And we do a lot of custom stuff, too. So we do like companies from like Tesla to Audi to I think we just did bottles for Porsche in Europe, and we do a ton of that stuff. So we do like kind of both. We do like we have our retail, online, direct, and then do the custom stuff, and it goes hand in hand with like our mission to get the reusable out there, and if we can help companies to go more reusable, we're sort of doing what we started it for.
Yeah, that's incredible, man.
Yeah.
So now you're back on cameras and taking. Do you do the photography and then Brad films stuff, or
so Brad does filming. I do photography, and so with Diving Board we do like the bigger production stuff. Like this year we did project for Facebook, Volkswagen. We're just working on a project for Specialized Bikes now.
How do you get Facebook as a client? Do they just call you up or bid on something?
We've been pretty lucky. We've been working a lot of companies direct, which has been super awesome. And then then some of these like Facebook we got through an agency. So we work with a handful of agencies, and that was interesting too. Like learn a lot.
Yeah. That's a
it was,
massive company, right?
Yeah, and it was a pretty big production. Like we had to curate a team for that, and it was a little bit different what we usually do. But again, it's like that's kind of how me and Brad roll. It's like, let's just dive in and figure out.
Yeah.
And it was great. But we mostly do sort of like active outdoor companies. And
yeah, the work you do is stunning. Where did I see that? You have your own website that's just like the stuff that you're doing, yeah?
Yeah, I do have a website. It's just jussioksanen.com. I'm not like the best person to keep it up to date. It's like, it's always one of those things. And like, it's hard because it's like the last 6 weeks I've done maybe 6 commercial shoots.
Oh, wow.
But I can't show a lot of that work until like some of it until a year from now.
Of course.
So like sometimes you get these like quick strikes where a company's like, yeah, you can post this, or sometimes you get like, stuff that it's like, you can never post anything, or show that work.
You have no rights to this.
I have no rights, and so it's just tough sometimes to like keep up the showy work. And
well, I went to the website this morning and I was like blown away. I'm like, holy shit, these images are insane.
Thank you.
So you've taken your love and your passion for the outdoors, and it really translates well. Like I was saying off mic before, like you can hire an ad agency, but like if you hire somebody that's just they do anything,
right,
then you're not going to get that authentic feel, right? Like you've worked with so many people in snowboarding that authenticity is their brand, right?
Yeah, no, it's
good. And
that was sort of where we came from. Like, we want to tell real stories the real way, and like, for instance, like I just shot some stuff for Thule, and it was exactly like I left here 2 a.m.
Yeah,
I knew exactly where I wanted to shoot up in High Sierras. Drove up to Mammoth, met up with the crew. We hiked 8 miles up to mountains. We got there at sunset. We got exactly like what I envisioned. Like we had like the location, the sunset, everything was like pinnacle. And then we hiked back. I think it was like 19 miles we hiked. And that was in one day when I left here at 2 a.m. and drove.
Oh my God.
But like, that's the kind of stuff that I enjoy too. It's like, yes, photography, all this, but it's like the whole, like finding the spots, curating, getting the right people, making it real with real people, going somewhere where actually they love going. And it's like, that's what they passionate about. And I'm just sort of there, like putting it all together.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because there's been years and years of like, you just hire models. Yeah. You set up your tents on the grass at the park and you shoot like the pretend mom and the pretend dad with the pretend kid. It's just, it's inauthentic. And that's most of advertising. Yeah. So that's cool.
And I do get that too, to extend, but at the same time, I think we've really tried to break that mold. Like even like last weekend, we just shot for Kashi. They do Kashi cereals, which is, it's not as what, we're doing out in the mountains and all that stuff.
Right.
So it's a little bit more curated, but still, like, we're trying to like really put a lot of effort into like the curating it right, so it feels real. And it's like finding the real people. I think that's always super important. And that's like, it's interesting because it's like when it comes to like the end product, the photography is really just, you're just there to push buttons. Like there's a lot of times like it all goes into like the locations, the people, just curation. And if you can get that right energy and feel, then you're just there to like, then it's just capturing, you know? And which is, it's beautiful when it comes together. But yeah, I do really enjoy that. And like now we're working with Specialized. We're doing the project with Jeremy Jones. So they want to tell us sort of like a Jeremy Jones story. And
Specialized, the bike
company. Yeah. So
what does he use bikes for?
So Jeremy, since he had his gnarly injury, bike was, obviously a huge part of his rehab, and sort of got back in the mountains and just doing stuff because it was, really hard recovery. It's, never ending recovery for him. But,
Right.
But the bike played a huge role with him, and especially all the e-bikes now too, that like, you don't necessarily need to put that torque or effort into your body, but you can still get up
To
in
really
these
cool
gnarly
spots.
places and then right downhill. So where that was important, sort of like that mid connection for Jeremy to
I
get
love it.
back
Yeah,
on.
that's dope.
Yeah, so we sort of like telling that story, and that's really fun because you can like work with rad brands and then telling these stories that are like meaningful and like it's real deal. So we're just there to sort of like, let's bring this live the right way, and
That's so sick, dude.
super fun.
Wow, all the way from the beginning of your life to where you are now. So now, yeah, you're a dad a lot of the time, and then like, do you guys split the parenting duties and everything?
Yeah, so we both work home. Like
Yeah.
a lot of my we have now we're working on that project. So when I'm home, I'm working a lot of the pre-post. Zoe's working home. We have a little bit of crossover. Some of the brands that we work, she does a lot of the this kind of strategy stuff for a lot of the brands. So
Brad.
we work together. I'm super avid like cyclist now. Like it's like the passion.
Yeah.
So I ride. I think this year I've ridden almost like 9,000 miles on my bikes.
That's nuts.
So I ride my sort of like my routine here in like I go like 3 times a week. I wake up at 4:30, sometimes 3 in the morning. I ride like 50, 60, 100 miles. I come home, then Zoe takes the kids to school. We work, do whatever we got to do, then pick the kids from school. Pretty much once they come out of school, it's game
That's
on.
it.
Like we just I love just being home, hanging out, being available for them.
And snowboard and skate.
So my older one, he plays for academy here for soccer, so he's super into that.
Yeah.
Like, they got invited to this tournament in Scotland for in the spring, where they playing like Juventus and Liverpool and it's sick. And then
awesome.
and then my younger one, he's just gotten so into skating.
Rad.
So we're every day on a skate mission.
I saw that park down by the Vons there. It
Yeah,
looks like
the
a lot of
Poots.
fun.
Yeah, it's super fun. So he pretty much lives there, comes home, does his homework, and then goes skating. And we bought a place up in Mammoth last Christmas.
Sick.
So we take the boys up there. It's been a long process trying to get them snowboarding. It's pretty funny. When they were kids, my older one, he's super stubborn, and I got him on a snowboard young, and then he's like, okay, I don't need I know how to do this. Like snowboarding is like he needed my help, and then obviously the younger one followed. So they skied for a few years, but they just coming back snowboarding now,
Rad.
and so which is super fun. And so we go Mammoth a lot. Do skiing, snowboarding, skating. Now the Mammoth skate park is sick, and my younger one, he's just sort of like discovered that this summer. So we've done so many trips there this summer, and it's fun because I go mountain biking, we skate, we hike, we go to lakes, and it's just, I think that is super important for me too, because that's how I grew up in the woods. Just being busy and doing what I
Do your
want.
parents come over and visit all the time, or do you get to see them?
They come. They usually come once a year, but they have their health issues and stuff, so we usually go back once a year.
Yeah.
But
they must have been so proud of you, like over here and making it as this.
Well, I think it's been
athlete.
it's been a trip, and I think like I've learned so much from my dad, and I was very grateful. First of all, that he sort of put me to like work to get what I wanted, and I think one of the big things too that sort of gave me ownership of my snowboard career too. Like I never felt like I was driven or obligated to them,
Right.
So I made all the decisions myself as far as my career and my business.
Totally.
And there was actually times like after the Olympics, I got an offer from one of the Nokia cell phone companies.
Yeah, yeah.
It was like almost $100,000.
Oh, man.
I wasn't making any of that, but it was like I had to. The obligation to that would have been like do the half pipe FIS.
Oof.
And I was like, no way, like that's never gonna happen. So I'm like, I was not interested. Like they could have paid me $1 million, I'd be like, no thanks.
Yeah.
So I turned that down, and that was a heavy one for my dad, because at the time it was like it's like me and mom, we work so hard and we don't even make this money, and you just turn this money down, like.
Yeah.
But I was so confident that I kind of knew what I was kind of working towards.
Yeah.
And I had my vision, and also the fact that I grew up working and making my money, like buying my snowboard equipment and paying for my trips. So I was like, this is like me. Like you're not telling me what to do.
That's amazing.
And so I think
it was a good call though too. Nokian got out of it like
hell
a
yeah.
year or
And
two.
at the time,
They
like
bailed
I
on
was
everybody.
making probably like $500 a month, but I was coming to US, and I was like, hell yeah,
You're
like,
doing this. Yeah.
yeah. So and it took my dad for a while to like come back, and it's like, hey, like that was like right thing to do.
Oh,
like
good.
I didn't see that at the time. I think it took him years, but like he finally came around and admitted that,
that's
like,
good.
and I fair enough, like I'm like this snowboard skate rat, and like making these decisions, like now seeing as a point of like being a parent, it'd be like, really, like you're gonna make that call, like
yeah. You're a kid,
heavy.
you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's awesome. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, man. Thank you for taking so much time and being so open about it.
Blast.
Yeah, it's a really fun medium because you don't have any worries with the cameras. Like I was saying, they want me to do videos of them, which is fine. I just have to get new equipment first before I.
No,
you know how it is.
No, this is cool, and it's always fun to take a little memory lane. There's once you do this, like all these things start popping and coming back. It's like, I remember this and that, and so it's
the friendships,
it's
man.
fun.
It sounds like the friendships that you've had over the years.
Yeah.
Like you've lived in a zone with a lot of really good people.
Yeah.
Right.
No, very fortunate, and it's cool to like now connect with some of these people, and like people doing cool stuff, like Yoni Malmi doing his like clothing company that I was part of starting back in the days, and he's killing it, and Ville's doing like heart roasters, coffee, I'm going crushing
down
it. And,
I'm going down to Portland.
And Benedict is doing his stuff, and like all different people going different ways and finding their ways, and I think it's really cool to see.
Yeah. It's super. The snowboard community is really creative. So whenever somebody that was in the heart of that community kind of moves out into another industry, it brings that like creativity out into that. It's dope. It's cool to see.
It is. Yeah.
Stoked, man.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
Thanks, dude. We'll do one of those. Hell yeah. Thanks, dude.
Cheers.
FNRad shoutouts this week to Tony Lefroy, who is BC's Capita rep and also slangs Norwegian wax from Swix and Toko. Tony's dropped off an expensive array of race-winning waxes just in time for me to start tuning for the Baker Bank Slalom. I don't know what board I'm going to ride, so I'm putting base coats on a bunch of wired boards. Thanks a million, Tony. You're the best. And be sure to come back next week, listeners, for my interview with world champion halfpipe rider Shannon Dunn, presented by Vans and brought to you by SIA Productions.